The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks using the Horizon's FTL drive. Jack spent most of that time preparing his report and thinking about what he would tell the leaders back home. The weight of the decision ahead felt heavier with each passing day. By the time Earth's moon came into view, he had reviewed the data 100 times and it always led to the same conclusion. The Galactic Council was not what it pretended to be. Claire had returned on a different ship, carrying her own evidence and testimonies. She had managed to record conversations with 7 different species representatives, all telling similar stories of broken promises and endless exploitation. Henry had compiled economic data that showed exactly how wealth flowed from probationary species to the Council's elite. Amanda had decrypted internal communications that revealed the Council's true intentions toward humanity. The United Nations had called an emergency session. Every nation's representative was present, along with military leaders, scientists, and advisors. Jack stood at the podium in the Great Hall, looking out at hundreds of faces. The future of humanity rested on what happened in this room. 3 weeks ago, we made first contact with alien life, Jack began. We learned that we are not alone in the universe and that thousands of other species have reached the stars before us. We also learned that the galaxy is governed by an organization called the Galactic Council. Today I'm here to tell you that this council is not the peaceful alliance it claims to be. It is a system designed to exploit and control. He presented the evidence methodically, the economic analyses, the testimonies from alien species, the historical records showing probationary members trapped for thousands of years, the decrypted messages revealing the council's plans for Earth. As he spoke, he watched the faces in the audience shift from curiosity to concern to outrage. When he finished, President Linda Hayes stood up. She was a tall woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen her through 2 terms of leading the most powerful nation on Earth. Commander Morrison, what you're describing is essentially a protection racket on a galactic scale. They're offering us membership in a system designed to keep us subordinate forever. That's correct, Madam President, Jack said. And if we refuse? Asked General Paul Griffin, the head of Earth's combined military forces. He was a square-jawed man in his 60s who had spent his entire life preparing for threats to humanity. They'll quarantine our system? For at least 500 years, Jack confirmed. No ships in or out. Complete isolation. That's unacceptable, said Dr. Susan Park, the chief scientist who had helped develop Earth's FTL drive. She was younger than most in the room, barely 40, but her mind had revolutionized physics. 500 years of isolation would mean abandoning space exploration entirely. We'd lose the momentum of everything we've achieved. But accepting their terms means losing our freedom, countered Ambassador Richard Cole, an experienced diplomat who had negotiated treaties across Earth for decades. We'd be trading exploration for exploitation. The debate continued for hours. Some argued for acceptance, believing humanity could work within the system and eventually reform it. Others demanded refusal, preferring isolation to subjugation. Still others suggested trying to negotiate better terms, though Jack doubted the council would bargain in good faith. Finally, Claire stood to speak. She had been sitting quietly, listening to every argument. I've thought about this constantly since meeting the council. I believe there's a third path we haven't fully considered. We accept probationary membership publicly, but we prepare for resistance privately. The room erupted in discussion. President Hayes raised her hand for silence. Explain, Ambassador. The probationary species outnumber the full members by a ratio of 70 to 1, Claire said. But they're divided, isolated, and have been conditioned to accept the system as inevitable. If humanity can organize these species into a coalition, we could force reform from within. We have advantages the Council doesn't expect. Our technology is our own, not given to us by them. Our military tactics are unknown to them. And most importantly, we haven't been broken by centuries of subjugation. You're talking about rebellion, General Griffin said. His tone wasn't disapproving, but rather calculating. That means war. It means resistance, Claire corrected. War might come, but only if we're discovered before we're ready. The key is building a network slowly and carefully. We make contact with sympathetic species. We share information and resources secretly. We help them develop their own capabilities. And when we're strong enough, we present the Council with a choice: reform the system or face a united opposition they cannot suppress. And if we're discovered? Asked Dr. Park. Then we fight, Jack said simply. But we'd be fighting anyway if we refuse membership now. At least this way, we'd have allies and time to prepare. President Hayes looked around the room, gauging reactions. This is the most important decision humanity has ever faced. I want to hear from each of you. General Griffin, the general stood. From a military perspective, accepting membership buys us time. Time to analyze their capabilities, identify weaknesses, and build alliances. If we refuse now, they'll quarantine us immediately, and we'll be facing them alone in 500 years, assuming they don't find an excuse to attack sooner. I support the ambassador's plan. Dr. Park? The scientist adjusted her glasses. I agree. We need access to the galaxy to continue advancing. Isolation would stagnate our development. But more than that, we have a moral obligation. If there are hundreds of species being exploited by this system, and we have the capability to help them, shouldn't we try? One by one, the leaders voiced their positions. The vote wasn't unanimous, but the majority agreed. Humanity would accept probationary membership while secretly working to organize resistance. President Hayes made it official. Commander Morrison, Ambassador Donovan, you'll return to the Council and inform them of our acceptance. You'll also begin making contact with potential allies. General Griffin will start a crash program to advance our military technology. Dr. Park will lead research into ways to counter Council surveillance and control systems. We're going to need secure communication methods, defensive capabilities, and most importantly, we'll need to appear cooperative while building our strength. Jack nodded. Understood, Madam President. How much authority are we giving to field operatives? You and your crew will serve as Ambassador Donovan's covert operations team, Hayes explained. You'll travel under the guise of exploration and trade missions, but your real purpose will be making contact with probationary species and building our coalition. Claire will maintain her public role as Earth's representative to the Council, which will give her cover to move around and gather intelligence. Claire looked at Jack. We'll need more than just the Horizons crew. We'll need specialists, diplomats, intelligence officers. I'll assign a full support team, General Griffin said. People we can trust, absolutely. This operation cannot be compromised. Over the next 2 weeks, the team was assembled. Katie and Henry remained with Jack, but they were joined by others. Intelligence analysts who could decode alien communication patterns. Linguists who studied the languages of probationary species. Engineers who could adapt human technology to work with alien systems. Each person was carefully vetted and briefed on the mission's true nature. They also began the military buildup. Dr. Park and her team worked day and night to improve Earth's defensive capabilities. They couldn't match the Council's technology yet, but they didn't need to. They just needed to make invasion costly enough that the Council would think twice. Meanwhile, Amanda began establishing secure communication networks. She worked with experts in quantum encryption to develop systems that even the Council's advanced technology couldn't crack. They built these systems into seemingly innocent commercial satellites and trading vessels. Jack spent his time studying everything they knew about Council military tactics. The information was limited, but patterns emerged. The Council relied on overwhelming force and superior technology. They expected quick surrender. Their ships were powerful but designed for intimidation rather than prolonged combat. It was a military doctrine built for suppressing rebellious subjects, not fighting a determined enemy. They've grown complacent, General Griffin observed during one planning session. They haven't faced a real military challenge in thousands of years. Most species surrender without fighting because resistance seems hopeless. That's our advantage, Jack agreed. If we can show the probationary species that the Council can be resisted, it changes everything. The day came to return to the Council station. Jack stood on the bridge of the horizon again, but this time he wasn't filled with wonder and excitement. This time he knew what he was facing. Claire stood beside him, reviewing her speech one final time. Are you nervous? Jack asked. Terrified, Claire admitted. But more than that, I'm angry. The Council has been doing this to species for thousands of years. Someone needs to stand up to them. Why does it have to be us? Claire smiled. Because we're the ones who showed up. Because we have a chance to make a difference. And because if not us, then who? The Horizon dropped out of FTL near the Council station. This time they were expected. 2 years had passed since humanity joined the Galactic Council as a probationary member. To any casual observer, Earth had settled into its role perfectly. Human ships traveled regularly between Earth and various Council worlds, carrying trade goods and exchanging information. Ambassador Claire Donovan attended council sessions faithfully, listening to debates and learning the intricate politics of galactic governance. Commander Jack Morrison and his crew on the horizon conducted exploration missions to uncharted systems, mapping new territories and making contact with isolated species. But beneath this peaceful surface, a revolution was building. The list Yalti had provided proved invaluable. Each name belonged to someone from a probationary species who secretly opposed the Council's exploitation. Over the past 2 years, Jack and Claire had carefully reached out to each one, building trust slowly and methodically. Some meetings took place in crowded marketplaces where conversations could get lost in noise. Others happened on remote stations far from Council oversight. A few occurred on the ships themselves, in the depths of space where no one could listen. Katie had become an expert at making these contacts. Her friendly demeanor and genuine curiosity made her easy to trust. She would strike up conversations about ship maintenance or navigation routes, and somehow those conversations would drift toward politics and frustration with the Council. She had personally recruited 14 different species to their cause. One such mission brought them to a mining colony on the edge of Council space. The colony was operated by the Vaishan, a species that looked almost human except for their silver skin and pure black eyes. They had been probationary members for 1,800 years, and they were angry about it. Katie found Korva in the engineering section of the colony's main facility. He was young for a Vaishan, barely 30 by Earth years, but his hands moved with practiced skill as he worked on a power converter. "You're from Earth," he said without looking up. "The new probationary species." "That's right," Katie said. "I'm Lieutenant Katie Wells. Our ship needs some repairs, and I heard you were the best engineer in this sector." Korva finally looked at her, and something in his expression was guarded. "The Council doesn't like probationary species talking too much with each other. They prefer we stay separate." "Why is that?" Katie asked innocently. "Because together we're strong and separated we're weak," Korva said. He went back to his work. "Your power coupling is fine. Someone told you to come talk to me." "Someone who believes things could be different," Katie said quietly. Korva's hands stopped moving. He was silent for a long moment. "Things have been the same for 1,800 years. Why would they change now?" "Because humans don't accept injustice very well," Katie said. "And we're meeting a lot of others who feel the same way." Over the next hour, Katie and Korva talked. She learned about the Veshan people, how they had developed FTL travel through their own ingenuity, how they had been excited to join the galactic community, and how that excitement had slowly turned to despair as generation after generation remained locked in probationary status. The Council had promised that the Vaishan work ethic and engineering skills would lead to quick advancement. Instead, those same skills were exploited, with Vaishan engineers building Council ships and stations for fixed wages that never seemed to rise. "We tried to rebel once," Korva admitted, "about 300 years ago. The Council crushed it in a week. They destroyed our primary shipyard and killed thousands. After that, most Veshan decided it was better to accept the situation." "But not you," Katie said. "Not me," Korva agreed. "My grandfather told me stories about the rebellion. He said the problem wasn't that the Veshan fought back. The problem was that they fought alone. If other probationary species had joined them, the Council couldn't have responded so easily." "What if other species did join?" Katie asked. "What if there was a real coalition?" Korva looked at her carefully. "Then I would want to be part of it." Similar conversations were happening across the galaxy. Henry Chang was on a research station making contact with the Morocci, a species brilliant in mathematics and computer systems. They had been probationary members for over 2,000 years, and their talents were used to maintain the Council's vast data networks. Henry shared encryption techniques that would let them communicate without Council surveillance. Amanda Price had traveled to a diplomatic hub where dozens of species representatives gathered. She posed as a trade negotiator, while secretly meeting with communications specialists from 6 different probationary species. Together, they were building a network that spanned hundreds of light years, all invisible to Council monitoring. Jack himself was meeting with military officers from species that had their own defense forces. The Council allowed probationary members to maintain small militaries for local security, but they were carefully regulated to prevent any real threat. However, officers from these forces understood strategy and tactics. and many were frustrated by the limitations placed on them. On a training station in the Krylon sector, Jack sat across from a Dravix commander named Corthan. The Dravix were warriors by culture, standing over 8 feet tall with armored hides and powerful builds. They had been probationary members for 1,000 years, forced to provide soldiers for Council peacekeeping operations while having no say in where or how those soldiers were deployed. "Your reputation precedes you, Commander Morrison," Corthan said in a deep, rumbling voice. "The Council speaks of human military tactics with both interest and concern." "Concern?" Jack asked. "You think differently than most species," Corthan explained. "The Council has studied your history, your wars, your conflicts, your revolutions. They note that humans have a tendency to win battles they should lose, to find solutions when faced with impossible situations. This makes them nervous." "Does it make you nervous?" Jack asked. Corthan showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. "It makes me hopeful. The Dravix respect strength and honor combat. We have fought for the Council for 1,000 years. But we grow tired of fighting others' battles while having no voice in our own future. If things were to change," Jack said carefully, "would the Dravix stand with those seeking change?" "The Dravix would stand with those who fight with honor," Corthan replied. "We have no love for the Council. They use us as weapons and treat us as servants. If someone was brave enough to challenge this system, yes, we would stand with them." The coalition was growing. By the end of the second year, Claire had compiled a list of 23 species who were committed to the cause. Some, like the Talrin and the Vaishan, could provide technical expertise. Others, like the Dravix, could offer military strength. Still others contributed intelligence, resources, or simply the determination to fight for something better. But building the coalition was only half the battle. They also needed to prepare for the Council's response. General Griffin had continued his work on Earth, developing new weapons and defensive systems. Dr. Park had made breakthroughs in shield technology and faster-than-light communication. Human shipyards were working around the clock, building vessels that looked like simple cargo ships but could be converted to combat roles if necessary. The Council noticed humanity's industrial growth, but they weren't concerned. After all, probationary species were supposed to develop. It meant more resources to exploit. What the Council didn't realize was that Earth was also helping other probationary species advance. Vaishan engineers worked with human designers to create better ships. Morokai programmers collaborated with Amanda to develop unhackable communication systems. Talrin scientists shared their knowledge of energy systems, while humans taught them manufacturing techniques. The crisis came in the third year. A Council observer on one of the Talrin worlds discovered encrypted communications that suggested unauthorized contact between probationary species. The observer reported this to High Chancellor Vorn, who immediately ordered an investigation. Claire was in a council session when Vorn made his announcement. "It has come to our attention that certain probationary species have been engaging in unauthorized communications and potential conspiracies against the Council order. This is a grave violation of the terms of membership." The chamber erupted in discussion. Claire kept her expression neutral, but her heart was racing. Had they been discovered? How much did the Council know? "The primary suspect is the Talrin representative, Yalti," Vorn continued. "He's been arrested and will be questioned. Any species found to be involved in this conspiracy will face severe consequences." Claire stood up. "High Chancellor, with respect, what exactly is Yalti accused of?" "The right to communicate with other species is not restricted under Council regulations. The right to form unauthorized alliances and share restricted information certainly is," Vorn replied coldly. "Unless you wish to join him in questioning Ambassador Donovan, I suggest you remain silent." The threat was clear. Claire sat down, but she was already thinking. They had to accelerate their plans. If the Council was starting to investigate, it was only a matter of time before they uncovered the full extent of the coalition. That night, Claire sent an emergency message through their secure network. It was simple and brief. "Storm coming, prepare." The stars stretched endlessly before the horizon as it cut through space at speeds that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. Commander Jack Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the blue light of faster-than-light travel paint the viewing screen in strange patterns. His hands gripped the railing as he thought about what this moment meant for humanity. They were the first crew to leave their solar system using their own technology, built with human hands and human minds. We're approaching the Proxima system. Commander, Lieutenant Katie Wells said from the pilot seat. Her voice was steady, but Jack could hear the excitement underneath. They had all trained for this mission for 3 years, and now they were finally here. Slow us down to normal speed, Jack ordered. Let's see what we found. The ship shuddered slightly as it dropped out of FTL. The blue light faded, and suddenly they could see real stars again. A red dwarf sun glowed ahead of them, smaller and dimmer than Earth's sun. 3 planets orbited it, and their sensors immediately picked up something unexpected. Commander, I'm reading a structure in orbit around the 2nd planet, Doctor. Henry Chang called out from the science station. He was leaning close to his screen, his fingers dancing across the controls. It's massive. Nothing natural could create that signature. Jack felt his heart beat faster. Can you tell what it is? Some kind of station, Henry said. And Commander, I'm picking up energy readings that match our FTL drive. Someone else has this technology. The bridge went quiet. Everyone knew what this meant. Humanity was not alone in the universe, and they were not the first to reach the stars. Open all communication channels, Jack said to Amanda Price, their communication specialist. Let's introduce ourselves. Amanda nodded and began working on her console. Within seconds, she looked up with surprise on her face. Sir, they're already hailing us. And they're speaking English. Put them through, Jack said. A voice came through the speakers, cold and formal. Unidentified vessel, you have entered Galactic Council space without authorization. You are ordered to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will be met with force. Jack exchanged glances with Katie. They had imagined first contact many different ways, but never like this. This is Commander Jack Morrison of the Earth vessel Horizon. We come in peace and had no knowledge of any territorial boundaries. We're on a mission of exploration. There was a pause before the voice responded. Earth. Yes, we have records of your system. You were classified as pre-FTL. Your development of faster-than-light travel without Council supervision is a serious violation of protocols. You will comply with boarding procedures immediately. Comply or what? Katie muttered under her breath, but Jack heard her. We'll cooperate, Jack said into the comm. But I want assurances that my crew will not be harmed. You are in no position to make demands, the voice replied. However, as this appears to be an act of ignorance rather than aggression, you will be treated according to standard first contact procedures. Stand by. The next hour passed in tense silence. A smaller ship detached from the station and approached the horizon. It was sleek and angular, built with materials that shimmered in the starlight. When it docked with their airlock, Jack gathered his senior officers and waited. The airlock opened, and 3 beings walked through. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with scaled skin that shifted between blue and purple. Their eyes were large and dark, and they moved with a grace that seemed almost liquid. Each wore what looked like armor, and each carried a weapon at their side. The lead figure stepped forward. I am Enforcement Officer Kelrix of the Vraxian Guard. You are Commander Morrison? I am, Jack said, standing straight. This is my crew. We mean no harm. That is for the Council to determine, Kelrix said. You and your senior officers will come with us to the station. Your ship will remain here under guard. If you cooperate, this process will be simple. They had no choice. Jack, Katie, Henry, and Amanda followed the Vraxians to their ship. As they flew toward the station, Jack got his first real look at it. The structure was enormous, easily 10 times the size of any space station humanity had built. Ships of dozens of different designs docked at various ports, and he could see beings of different species moving through transparent corridors. Inside the station, they were led through halls that curved and twisted in ways that made no architectural sense. The gravity felt normal, but Jack could see that different sections had different orientations. Beings walked on walls and ceilings as if they were floors. Some looked almost human, while others were so alien that Jack struggled to identify which parts were heads and which were limbs. Finally, they reached a large chamber. The walls were a deep purple, and the ceiling was so high that it disappeared into shadow. At the far end sat a platform where several beings waited. The central figure was massive, with 4 arms and skin like black stone. Jewels or perhaps cybernetic implants glowed across its body. "Humans of Earth," the being said, and its voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am High Chancellor Vorn of the Krillian Empire, leader of the Galactic Council. You stand before us having committed a serious violation of galactic law." Jack stepped forward. "With respect, we didn't know any laws existed. We developed FTL technology on our own and came out here to explore. This is our first time meeting another species." "Ignorance is not an excuse," Vorn said. "The Council has monitored your world for thousands of your years. We were waiting for you to reach the proper level of social and technological development before making contact. By developing FTL before reaching that level, you have disrupted the natural order." "Natural order?" Jack couldn't help but ask. "What gives you the right to decide when we're ready?" Several of the beings on the platform made sounds that might have been gasps or laughs. Vorn leaned forward, and Jack felt the weight of his attention. "The Council has maintained peace and order in this galaxy for over 50,000 years," Vorn said slowly. "We have seen countless species destroy themselves or others through premature advancement. Our protocols exist to prevent such tragedies." "So what happens now?" Katie asked, speaking up for the first time. Vorn gestured with one of his massive hands. "Humanity must choose. You may accept probationary membership in the Council. You will be given time to prove yourselves worthy of full membership. During this period, you will follow Council regulations regarding technology, expansion, and commerce. Or you may refuse and return to your system, which will be placed under quarantine. No ship may leave, and no outside contact will be permitted for a minimum of 500 years. Jack felt the weight of the decision crushing down on him. 500 years of isolation, or submission to rules they had no part in making. "How long is the probationary period?" "That depends entirely on your species' ability to meet our standards," Vorn said. "Some species advance quickly, others take more time to learn." Something about the way he said it made Jack suspicious. "How long is typical?" For the first time, Vorn hesitated. "That varies greatly." Before Jack could press further, a door opened, and another human entered the chamber. She was in her 40s, wearing a formal suit, and she moved with confidence despite the alien surroundings. "Commander Morrison," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Ambassador Claire Donovan. Earth sent me through one of our other early FTL ships when we detected your arrival here. I've been briefed on the situation." She turned to Vorn. "Chancellor, I request time to consult with Commander Morrison before humanity makes any formal decision." Vorn studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "You have 6 of your hours. Use them wisely." As they were led to a waiting area, Jack leaned close to Claire. "Do you know what we're dealing with?" Claire's expression was grim. "More than you might think. And none of it is good." Claire led them to a small room that the Vraxians had designated as a meeting space. The walls were bare metal, and the furniture was clearly designed for species with very different body shapes than humans. Jack and his crew sat awkwardly on benches that were too high, while Claire pulled out a small device from her pocket. "This creates a sound field that should prevent them from listening in," she explained, activating it. A faint humming filled the air. "I arrived here 3 days ago on the second FTL ship Earth sent out. I've had time to observe and ask questions. What I've learned is disturbing." "Tell us everything," Jack said. Claire took a deep breath. "The Galactic Council claims to represent 847 different species. That number is technically true, but here's what they don't advertise openly. Only 12 of those species have full voting rights. The rest are what they call probationary members or client species." "How is that possible?" Henry asked. "Don't the probationary species eventually become full members?" "That's what they're told," Claire said. "But I started digging into the public records, which they keep in a massive database. I looked up some of these probationary species. Henry, there are species that have been in probationary status for over 3,000 years. Katie leaned forward. "That's impossible. How can you be on probation for 3,000 years? Because the system is designed that way," Claire said quietly. "Every time a species gets close to meeting the requirements for full membership, The Council changes the requirements. They add new conditions, new standards, new hoops to jump through. The probationary status is permanent for most species. Amanda pulled out her datapad and started making notes. So what exactly does probationary status mean? It means you follow Council laws but have no say in making them, Claire explained. It means you can trade with other Council species but only under terms the Council approves. It means you can't expand beyond certain boundaries without permission. It means your technology development is monitored and controlled. Essentially, you become a client state that provides resources and labor to the full member species, while being told you're working toward equality that will never come. Jack felt anger rising in his chest. This is slavery with extra steps. It's exploitation dressed up as civilization, Claire agreed. And from what I've learned, humanity has something the Council wants very badly. What's that? Jack asked. Our creativity and our military thinking, Claire said. I spoke with a few representatives from other probationary species who were willing to talk quietly. They told me that humans have a reputation even before we developed FTL. The Council has been monitoring our wars, our conflicts, our problem-solving methods. We approach warfare and strategy differently than most species. We adapt quickly, we use unconventional tactics, and we're unpredictable. The Krillians, who dominate the Council's military forces, are particularly interested in accessing our strategic databases and military training methods. They want to study us like lab rats, Katie said with disgust. Worse, Claire said. They want to use us. If we accept probationary membership, we'll be obligated to share our technology and knowledge. They'll put our industries to work building their ships and weapons. They'll recruit our soldiers and officers to train their forces. And in return, we'll get a seat at the children's table and promises that maybe, someday our great-great-grandchildren might be considered equal. Henry was already working on his datapad. Can I access their database from here? Claire handed him an access code. I got temporary visitor credentials. It's limited, but you can see some things. For several minutes, Henry worked silently while the others waited. Finally, he looked up and his face was pale. I ran an economic analysis on the trade patterns. The probationary species are being systematically exploited. They export raw materials and manufactured goods at fixed prices set by the Council. They import technology and finished products at prices 3 to 5 times higher. The wealth flows consistently from probationary species to full member species. Based on these numbers, some probationary species are effectively indentured servants paying off debts that only grow larger over time. Can we prove this to the Council? Amanda asked. If we show them the numbers, if we make it public. The Council already knows, Claire said. This isn't a secret to them. It's how their system works. The question is whether the general populations of the various species understand what's happening. That's harder to say. The Council controls most major information networks. Jack stood up and paced the small room. So our choices are to accept this corrupt system or spend 500 years locked away from the rest of the galaxy. There might be a third option, Claire said slowly. But it's dangerous. Tell us, Jack said. We accept probationary membership, but we don't really accept it, Claire explained. We play along while secretly organizing resistance. I've already made contact with 3 species representatives who are unhappy with the current system. They're terrified to speak openly because the Council has crushed rebellions before, but they're willing to talk in private. If humanity can help organize the probationary species into a real coalition, we might be able to force reform from within. That's rebellion, Katie said. If they catch us, they'll do more than quarantine Earth. I know, Claire said. But what's the alternative? Accept permanent subjugation? Hope that somehow Earth is the one species in thousands of years that actually makes it to full membership? Or go home and hide for 5 centuries while everyone we know grows old and dies? Jack thought about the millions of people on Earth, going about their lives dreaming of the stars. He thought about humanity's long history of fighting against tyranny and oppression. He thought about what his mission had meant to represent. Hope, exploration, and humanity's place among the stars. If we're going to do this, we need more information, Jack said finally. We need to know who might be our allies and who will definitely be our enemies. We need to understand the Council's military capabilities and their weaknesses, and we need to do all of this without them realizing what we're planning. I agree, Claire said. I propose that Earth officially accepts probationary membership tomorrow when we give our answer to Chancellor Vorn. But before that happens, we start building networks tonight. How? Amanda asked. Claire smiled. You're a communications specialist, aren't you? I need you to figure out how to tap into their network without being detected. Every message that passes through this station is monitored, but there have to be ways around that. Meanwhile, Katie and Henry, I need you to explore this station. Talk to people from different species. Be friendly. Be curious, but pay attention to what they say and how they say it. Look for anyone who seems dissatisfied or resentful. And what will you and Commander Morrison do? Henry asked. We're going to meet with one of my contacts, Claire said. A representative from a species called the Talrin. They've been probationary members for over 3,000 years, and they're ready to talk about why that's wrong. They spent the next hour planning. Amanda worked with Henry to hack into the station's systems through what appeared to be a public information terminal. The security was sophisticated but not impossible, and Amanda had spent years working with Earth's most advanced encryption systems. She found what she was looking for, a way to create secure channels that would appear to be normal background data traffic. Katie left to explore the public areas of the station, striking up conversations with various aliens. She had always been good at reading people, and while alien body language was different, emotions seemed fairly universal. She noticed which species seemed confident and which seemed nervous. She saw how the Vraxians and the Krillians moved through the corridors like they owned everything, while others stepped aside quickly. Jack and Claire made their way to a different section of the station, following directions their contact had provided. They found themselves in what appeared to be a marketplace, with stalls selling goods from hundreds of worlds. The noise was overwhelming, with different species speaking in different languages, though translation devices made most of it comprehensible. A small being with green fur and 6 arms approached them. It stood only 4 feet tall, but its eyes were bright with intelligence. Ambassador Donovan, it said in perfect English. Thank you for coming. I am Yalti of the Talrin. This is Commander Morrison, Claire introduced Jack. Yalti gestured for them to follow, leading them through the crowd to a quieter corner. I must be quick. Being seen talking to new species draws attention. The Council tells you this is a partnership, yes? They tell you about the benefits of membership? They mentioned probationary membership, Jack said carefully. Yalti made a sound that might have been laughter or crying. My people have been probationary members for 3,214 years. Every generation is told that the next generation will see full membership. It never comes. The requirements change. The goalposts move. Meanwhile, we work, we build, we provide, and we remain powerless. Why doesn't anyone revolt? Claire asked. Some have tried, Yalti said quietly. The Council has weapons you cannot imagine. They have destroyed entire planets that refuse to comply. But more than that, they divide us. They give small privileges to some species and not others. The horizon dropped out of FTL at the edge of Earth's solar system, and Jack immediately saw what General Griffin had prepared. Ships filled the space around Earth, more than he had imagined possible. There were the sleek destroyers humanity had built using their own designs. There were cargo vessels that had been converted into carriers. There were defense platforms positioned around key locations, and mixed among them were ships from other species, the coalition members who had answered the call. Count them, Jack said to Henry. Henry worked his console quickly. 43 human ships, 16 Veshan vessels, 12 from the Talrin, 8 Dravix warships, and smaller numbers from another 10 species. Total fleet size is 94 ships. Against how many Council ships? Katie asked. Intelligence says the Council has over 300 ships in the sector, Henry admitted. And those are just the ones we know about. The odds were terrible, but Jack had expected that. The Council had thousands of years to build their forces. What mattered now was not the size of the fleet, but what they did with it. A transmission came through from General Griffin on the command ship, a massive vessel called the Liberty. Welcome back, Commander. We're ready to move on your signal. What's the status of the other coalition members? Jack asked. We've received confirmations from 19 species, Griffin reported. They're positioning their forces as planned. The Morokai have prepared the communications disruption. The Veshan have their engineers standing by for technical support. The Dravix are practically vibrating with excitement to finally fight back. And the rescue operation? Ambassador Donovan is already at the Council station. She's been feeding us intelligence on Yalti's location. He's being held in a detention facility on level 47. Heavy security, but nothing we can't handle if we move fast. Jack took a deep breath. Then let's begin. All ships proceed to jump coordinates. We're going to make some noise. The fleet activated their FTL drives simultaneously, and space filled with brilliant light as 94 ships jumped across the galaxy toward the Council's primary station in the Proxima system. The journey took only minutes with the new drives Dr. Park had developed. Another advantage the Council didn't know humanity possessed. They dropped out of FTL in perfect formation, and Jack's screen immediately lit up with warning signals. The Council station was ahead of them, massive and imposing. Around it were 30 Council warships, mostly Vraxian and Krillian designs. More were probably on the way. "This is High Chancellor Vorn," a voice boomed across all frequencies. "You have committed an act of war against the Galactic Council. Power down your weapons immediately or be destroyed." Instead of responding, Jack gave the signal. The Marakai ship in their formation activated its communications disruption field. It was technology they had developed specifically for this moment, using human encryption methods combined with their own expertise. Suddenly, the Council ships found their communications cut off from each other and from reinforcements. They could still fight, but they couldn't coordinate effectively. "Katie, get us to that station," Jack ordered. "Amanda, broadcast our message on all channels." Amanda activated the transmission they had prepared. It was Claire's voice, clear and powerful, speaking in a dozen languages simultaneously thanks to the translation software. "People of the galaxy, for too long the Galactic Council has claimed to represent peace and order. But the truth is that the Council is a system of exploitation that keeps hundreds of species in permanent subjugation. Today we declare that system ended. We are the Coalition of Free Species, and we fight for the right of all peoples to determine their own destiny." While Amanda broadcast the message, the fleet engaged the Council ships. The Dravix warships charged forward with aggressive tactics that caught the more cautious Council captains off guard. Human ships used hit-and-run strategies, striking fast and then pulling back before the enemy could respond effectively. Vishan vessels provided support, their superior engineering allowing them to repair damage quickly and keep the fleet operational. Jack watched the battle unfold on his screens. They were outnumbered, but they had surprise and motivation on their side. More importantly, they had something the Council ships lacked. They were fighting for something they believed in. "Approaching the station," Katie reported. "Council defense platforms are targeting us. Evasive maneuvers," Jack said. "Get us to docking port 17. That's closest to the detention level." The Horizon twisted and dodged through defensive fire. Katie's piloting was exceptional, threading the ship through spaces that seemed impossible. They took a few hits, but the shields held. Behind them, 3 Telrin ships followed, carrying the rescue team. They docked with a hard clang, and the boarding party rushed through. Jack led the way, wearing combat armor and carrying weapons that felt heavy in his hands. He was a ship commander, not a soldier, but today he would be both. With him were 20 Marines, 5 Dravix warriors, and 6 Veshan engineers who could bypass any lock. They moved through the station's corridors quickly. Alarms were blaring everywhere and Council security forces were mobilizing, but they were confused. The station had never been attacked before. They didn't have protocols for this situation. The rescue team reached the detention level and found it guarded by a dozen Vraxian enforcers. The Dravix warriors charged forward with roars that shook the walls. The fight was brief and brutal. Jack fired his weapon for the first time in combat, and the recoil surprised him, but the Vraxians went down, overwhelmed by the ferocity of the attack. The Veshan engineers went to work on the cell doors. Within minutes they had them open. Yalti was in the 3rd cell, badly injured but alive. The small Talrin looked up with those bright eyes and managed a weak smile. "Humans, I should have known you would do something dramatic." "Can you walk?" Jack asked. "With help," Yalti said. They got the small alien on his feet and began moving back toward the horizon, but getting in had been easier than getting out would be. More security forces were arriving, and they were better organized now. The corridor ahead was blocked by a squad of heavily armed Krillians. "We need another route," Jack said. "This way," one of the Veshan engineers said, pointing to a maintenance tunnel. "It will take us around them." They diverted into the narrow tunnel, moving as fast as they could with an injured Yalti. Behind them, they could hear the Council forces following. Jack stayed at the rear, providing covering fire when necessary. They were almost back to the horizon when disaster struck. A Krillian enforcer came around a corner ahead of them, carrying a weapon that looked like it could vaporize a building. It aimed at the group, and Jack knew they couldn't dodge in this narrow space. But before the enforcer could fire, Katie appeared from a side passage and tackled it from behind. The two went down in a tangle, and Katie's training in close combat proved superior. She disabled the enforcer quickly and grabbed its weapon. "Move, move, move," she shouted, and they ran. They reached the horizon to find Amanda already preparing for departure. "We've got company," she warned. "3 council ships are heading this way." "Get us out of here," Jack ordered, helping Yalti into a medical bay where Henry was waiting with a first aid kit. The horizon pulled away from the station just as the council ships arrived. But they weren't alone. The Dravik's warships had positioned themselves to cover the retreat, and they fought with savage determination. The council ships were powerful, but the Dravik's were warriors who had been waiting 1,000 years for this fight. "Jump coordinates locked in," Katie reported from the pilot seat. "Ready to go on your command." "Wait," Jack said, watching the battle on his screen. "The other ships haven't disengaged yet." They watched as the coalition fleet began pulling back in an organized retreat. The council ships pursued, but carefully. They had taken more damage than expected, and their commanders were being cautious. When the last coalition ship was clear, Jack gave the order. "Jump." The fleet disappeared in bursts of light, scattering to different coordinates as planned. The council ships tried to follow, but the Moroccai's disruption had delayed their response just enough. By the time they got organized, the coalition was gone. The horizon emerged in an empty system far from any council territory. One by one, the other coalition ships arrived. They had lost 6 vessels in the battle, and several more were damaged, but they had succeeded. Yalti was safe, and more importantly, they had struck a blow against the council that would echo across the galaxy. Over the next hours, reports came in from across known space. Amanda's broadcast had been heard by billions. The truth about the council's exploitation was spreading like fire. On dozens of worlds, probationary species were protesting, demanding answers, refusing to continue working under the old system. More species were joining the coalition. The 14 probationary members who had been uncertain before now committed fully. Even some full council members, species that had benefited from the old system, were calling for reform. An ancient species called the Eldari, who were founding members of the council, sent a message directly to Claire. The message was brief but powerful. "We remember when the council was founded to prevent tyranny, not to enforce it. The Eldari stand with those who fight for justice.